Hi, Scott Hogle here for Teach America to Sell Tour. I want to talk to you on a subject today that, frankly, I've never really talked about before. I've never talked about it because I've never believed it how it's been presented in the past. It's the subject of affirmations. Let me explain what I mean. A lot of people think just because they say something, it automatically, or in the words of my brother, automatically comes to pass. It's simply not true. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. You've probably heard that before. So these statements of affirmation I'm going to share with you actually may come across a little bit like declarations or resolutions. For me, I also call them strength statements. They're strength statements because more than just an affirmation and a declaration, they create strength in me. But it doesn't automatically happen. These 10 statements have changed my life, but I'll also tell you this, they've challenged my life. And if you let them do the same for you, they'll challenge and change your life for the better. Now, I don't expect you to adopt all 10. In fact, my hope is that you adopt one or two that might inspire you, but then come up with your own. Because ultimately, here's what it is. The 10 that I'm going to share with you, I've walked through. I've walked them out. They've challenged me. I've got a story for each one where they've created a breakthrough in my life. But frankly, just because I broke through once doesn't mean I own them forever. What I mean by that is that they challenge me. So for example, just the other day, as I was finishing up this 10 affirmations video for you, one of them challenged me again. Because I broke through many times, but then something came up on my life where I realized, oh my gosh, I'm here again. And so it caused me to have to take a step back, take a breath, and take a few steps of trust. I'll explain what I mean later in the video. So let me finish with this. Affirmations can be very powerful because they're statements that you make to yourself. Now, they may be statements that are already true. They may be statements that are creating a truth in you. And in other words, you're starting to walk into the future by saying them out loud. And it's important to learn how to talk to yourself because in the words of Joel Osteen, if you don't talk to yourself will talk back to you. Did you know that most of the self-talk in people's head is negative or it's doom or gloom? And why shouldn't it be? Because our minds are just filled with all this stuff all day long. So these affirmations, I want to help you become intentional about reprogramming, rewiring your thought life into things that you want. So these declarations become statement of strengths for you. And what's the benefit of this? Number one, so you'll go from strength to strength. Number two, you'll be able to inventory the breakthroughs you've made in your life. Number three, you'll be able to identify the breakthroughs you want to walk into in the future. But then here's another very important part. As you become stronger, you'll be able to make other people stronger around you. As you feel inner strength, you'll be able to help deposit strength and confidence and encouragement into others. And who are these other people? Well, it's your family. It may be your employees. It may be your customers. It may be a friend. You can't give away that which you don't have. So let's get started. My hope is that my 10 statements of strength deposit strength into you so then you can strengthen others. The first word I want to share with you is the word leader. Now, every one of these statements under the word you're going to see on your screen start with two very similar words, the words I will. The reason I say the words I will is that just again, because you say these out loud doesn't mean they automatically come to pass. So I will requires that you use your volition, that you use your willpower, that you use your decision-making ability to pull yourself into this affirmation, to make it so, if you will, if it's not true already. So let me read you this first one and you'll see it on the screen right now under leader. And it says this, I will lead my life by leveraging my opportunities, gifts, and the energy in the environment. That's a very powerful affirmation and statement of strength for me. Here's why. One of the things great leaders do is that whenever there's a crisis, they look around and they go, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to serve others? Let me explain what I mean. No matter what's happening around you, whether it's good or bad, there will always be positive and, frankly, negative energy in the environment. But it's your choice how you leverage it. You can leverage it for yourself, for selfish benefit. You can leverage it to serve your customers. You can leverage it to serve your family. In fact, let me give you a very present example. Find a crisis going on around you right now. There's the negative energy of fear that's in the marketplace. Fear can be a very powerful motivator. In fact, right now in America, we're walking through, and some industries are going through what I would call a small business recession. Some of you are going through a medical crisis. It's creating tremendous fear. And frankly, that's a negative energy. I don't particularly like that energy, but is there a way that you can leverage the energy in the environment to actually help yourself, to help those around you, to serve your employees better? You have to be able to work with negative and positive energy because, frankly, it's not all positive around us. But my favorite kind of energy is the positive energy. In fact, these 10 statements of strength, these 10 affirmations, these 10 beliefs are what I would also call go-to statements of strength. They strengthen me. My hope is that they're going to strengthen you because they create positive energy in my life. One of my mentors, John Maxwell, in his 15 Laws of Growth, has one of his laws, and it's called the Law of Pain. The Law of Pain simply says this: good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. In 1991, I had just gone into outside sales, selling business to businesses, advertising. Now, just around the time I did that, guess what happened? The Gulf War broke out. When a war breaks out in an economy, it creates fear, it creates uncertainty. And what do people do? They kind of close up, they put their hands in their pocket, they protect their wallets. And at the time, everybody in the industry, the senior sellers, the experts, if you will, were talking about a small business recession. They were talking about how difficult times were. They were talking about how people don't want to spend anything. But you know what? I was too dumb to follow the media at that point. I was too dumb to just follow everything that was in the atmosphere. So some very good mentors and frankly, managers came alongside of me at that time. And as they taught me about sales and they told me what to do, they just told me to go out and meet with people, do needs analysis and solve problems, and the sales would take care of themselves. Well, like I said, I was pretty young at the time, early 20s. I didn't know any better, so I did what they told me to do. And while everybody else was sitting on the bench waiting for things to get better, I was able to leverage the energy in the environment. So, for example, during a small business recession, you have businesses that are struggling and you become an answer to their problem. You also have businesses that want to grow. Then all of a sudden, what are you doing? You're using your resources to help them grow. Whatever industry you're in, there is negative and positive energy in the environment. Learn to tap into both. Another analogy I'll give to you is that of NASCAR. If you've ever seen NASCAR on TV, they have something called the draft. So one car kind of gets in front, the other one gets behind them, and the car in front is kind of breaking up the wind resistance, and literally the car behind them doesn't have the same wind resistance, so the lead car is actually literally pulling them around the track. There is a momentum in the marketplace that if you can identify it, it will help pull you around the track in your life. Another analogy I like to use is the Mighty Mo. It's this massive battleship carrier that is now actually retired in Pearl Harbor. But if you were a little tugboat and you got caught into what I would call the draft or the wake of the Mighty Mo, it would pull you along. If you swim in the ocean, you're aware of riptides. There are currents around you. There's momentum around you. There's energy around you that you can tap into. And as a leader, you've got to figure out how to tap it and how to leverage both. So wrapping this up, the strength statement is simply this, and I'm back in your notes if you're looking at it on the screen. I will lead my life by leveraging my opportunities, my gifts, and all the energy in the environment to serve others, to serve a purpose greater than myself. The second statement of strength, a very powerful affirmation, again, starts with the word I will, and in other words, I choose, says this, and it's on your screen right now. I will overcome by becoming stronger from the struggles in life, persevering to become a victor, not a victim. That's a mindset choice. No matter what you're going through, I promise you somebody's gone through it before. Some people come out stronger from experiences, some people come out weaker. Kelly Clarkson sings a song called What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger. But the song, frankly, the premise isn't true unless you choose to let the storm that you're walking through make you stronger. Let me explain what I mean. Don't you know a lot of people who go through things in life and it doesn't make them stronger, it makes them weaker? You have to choose victim mentality. Now, I didn't say it was easy. In fact, sometimes, frankly, it's hard as hell. If you've gone through medical crisis, if your life has been at threat before for medical stuff, maybe you've gone through cancer before, trust me, I know, that's some scary stuff at times. You have to choose to persevere. You have to choose to want to live. You have to choose to fight. I've got a friend who gave me a great fighting analogy the other day. He basically was telling me this. He used Muhammad Ali, but as he told me the story, his point was this: it's not a matter whether or not you get knocked down or not, but how fast you get up. Because things in life are going to knock you down. Things in life are going to push you down. So as you go through the storms in life, you have to choose to arise from that a victor and not a victim. You can literally just grit your teeth and hope to get through the storm, or you can lead through the storm. I will overcome. I choose to be a victor and not a victim. No matter what the storm is I'm facing, I will emerge victorious. I will emerge a conqueror. That's the decision I've made. I don't care what the storm is. Now, that doesn't mean that every day I'm going to feel strong, but it does mean that I'm willing to fight no matter what I'm facing. Whether I'm battling for my life, I'm battling for my income, I'm fighting for one of my kids. No matter what you're going through today, I can promise you this: if you choose to emerge a victor, things will start to show up on your path, not only to strengthen you, but to give you strategies for how to emerge a victor. The exact opposite is true too. If you don't intentionally make that choice, the natural victim mentality in the atmosphere will find you there as well. The third affirmation absolutely brings strength to me, and I'll tell you why. Because every time I approach a situation, every time I encounter a problem and I see myself as a solution, or I actually have a problem myself, I start looking for a solution. So the third word is problem solver, and it's coming up on your screen now. Here's what the problem solver strength affirmation says: I will see through difficult circumstances of life to seize opportunities disguised as problems. Where others shrink back, I will step out. You may have heard the story of two African shoe salesmen. They were both sent to Africa to do what? Sell a lot of shoes. Well, after about a week in the territory, they both called home. One of them calls home and says this: nobody wears shoes here. I'm booking a plane ticket and I'm coming home tomorrow. The other salesman calls back and says, nobody here wears shoes. I won't be coming back for months. There's opportunity everywhere. In my best-selling book, Persuade, the law of the prospector has a double meaning to it. But the law of the prospector simply says this: that sales makers, that leaders develop the potential within them. And as they do, they see the opportunity around them. The more that you can see, the more that you can see. So let me ask you this: what problems do you see around you? Because every problem you encounter, you could be a solution to. Everything that you desire is within reach. That's the law of recognition. You just have to be able to recognize it. Russell Cromwell, a very motivational speaker and preacher who lived over 100 years ago, told an amazing story called Acres of Diamonds, which I put in the law of the prospector and Persuade. There's also another story he tells about a couple who actually owned a farm in California, and this was back in the mid-1800s, and heard the story of the gold rush and wanted to grab their gold, if you will. So what they did was they sold the old farm and they traveled around trying to find their treasure. And then they wound up in England one day, broke, and thought to themselves, well, we've got to go back and start over. We didn't quite, find our treasure. So they go back to the farm that they sold, but they couldn't get in because there were government fences around it. And those government fences were protecting their property, which is now called Sutter Mill, which turned out to be one of the largest gold reserves in the United States. The point is this: that there's gold in your backyard. The point is this: is that opportunity doesn't come wrapped in $100 bills. Opportunity has to be discovered by you in order to be captured by you. So what problem is around you right now that is actually disguised as an opportunity? The very prayers that you're praying, the hopes and the dreams that you have, I promise you that they're all within reach. You've just got to be able to identify them. And every answer and every hope that you have will always come through a person or a place. That I can promise you. So just remember this: opportunities don't come disguised and wrapped in $100 bills. They look rough, they look uncut, they look like a problem. So identify the problems around you, figure out how to solve them, and that's a clue to the next season in your future. The next statement of strength, an affirmation, very powerful in my life, has to do with growth. And it simply says this: I will stretch to reach my potential, improving myself 1% daily. Now, here's a little disclaimer. I don't think I really get better 1% daily, but I think the fact that I'm trying to is what counts. So I might only be successful growing myself 1% 3 or 4 days a week, but you know what? That's enough for success. Here's why growth is so important. The more that you grow on the inside, the more your territory expands on the outside. Let me explain. Everybody wants something in life, but do you know how to attain it? What area are you interested in expanding your territory? What area do you want to expand in influence and in income? What do you want to be an expert at? Through my desire to growth over the last 30 years, I've grown as a seller, as a leader, as a speaker, as an author, as a preacher, and in so many different ways. It's all within your reach if you choose to start growing today. I remember many years ago when I started off on this journey, I discovered something interesting. I like to work out. I like physical fitness. Nobody ever had to drive me to the gym, at least for the first week. But if you're like me, you find exercise quite boring. So one of the things that I did that always kind of stimulated me is that to stimulate the mind, the body, and the spirit, when I would run through Manoa, or when I would run on a treadmill at the gym, or frankly, even in the garage with my free weights, I would always listen to personal growth. I would have a TEDx on or something because I wanted to be stimulated in multiple ways. So if I got bored with working out, my mind was growing. And here's what I would do. If I'm working out in the garage or in a gym, I'll keep a notebook handy, or I'll actually start to log a few things that I would start to learn. Here's where I picked up the habit. A number of years ago, I had made a decision to break through on the fitness level of my life, and frankly, make a permanent decision about personal growth consistently as well. So I made a deal with myself. In fact, it wasn't really a deal. It was more like a resolution. I made the decision that no matter what, come hell or high water, I was going to run 40 days in a row. 40 days in a row. Now, imagine making that decision on the front end. No matter how tired you were, you would put on your running shoes and you'd run 5 miles. So here's what I would do. I would put on one of my favorite mentors. I would listen to them as I ran. And here was my goal every time my feet would hit the pavement in the evening. I would simply make this one decision. I would run without ceasing, even if I had to do a fast walk at times, but also too, I would listen for things that caught my attention. And here was my goal. During the course of a 45-minute run, I would want to pick up 1 or 2 things, the most 1 or 2 powerful things that I could remember through the run without having to stop and try to write anything down. And when I would get back to the house, I kept a pad in the garage and I'd write down the 2 things that really impacted me as I was listening. And then I would ask this very simple question: how does this apply to my life? How does this apply to my profession? Because frankly, some of my favorite speakers don't speak directly into my profession, and they won't speak directly into you. You have to apply and adapt everything that you learn. But I learned this, that when I committed to growth, to committing to improving myself, and I could marry growing my mind, body, and spirit together, whether it's 30 or 45 minutes a few days a week or every day of the week, I would start to accelerate in my growth. So choose to grow 1% daily. Find something you love to listen to or watch while you're exercising. And remember, document the nuggets that you get from each session and then figure out how to apply them. That's the best way to start growing. Because here, again, when you grow on the inside, you're able to take more territory on the outside. The next statement of strength that brings quite a bit of strength to me, and I believe it will you too, is that of significance. Let me read to you the statement of strength here. I will intentionally pursue my purpose and serve a cause greater than myself. Years ago, I read a book called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. That book, I think, has sold more copies than any other book ever published besides the Holy Bible. I think they sold almost 30 million copies. There's a piece Rick wrote in there where he told a story when USA Today did a poll. If you could ask God any 2 questions, what would they be? You'll never guess what most Americans wanted to ask God. Where did I come from and why am I here? The why is what I want to talk to you about for just a quick second. Why has to do with purpose. What is your mission in this season of life? Now, you may have seen a lot of talk about purpose. You may have heard statements like, you don't decide your purpose, you discover it. Well, that's half true because you also have to decide it at some point. And here's another interesting clue about purpose is that purpose evolves through the different seasons of life. It's supposed to. You don't have one purpose or one calling. Your mission will evolve as you evolve. As you change, you have to adapt. Let me give you an example. When I was in my 20s, what's somebody's purpose in their 20s? Well, it's getting established in life. It's making money. It may be marriage. It may be settling down. But your focus may be on building yourself up. When I was in my 20s, my focus was getting better at my skill, getting better at sales, learning to establish myself, wanting to buy a home. But there comes a point to where when you get some of that stuff under your belt, my purpose, for example, later in my 20s became shifting from focusing on strengthening just myself to strengthening on others because I went to leadership. So my purpose went from sales to leadership. So I embraced leadership mentors in that season. Then my purpose became becoming an author, becoming a speaker, becoming a teacher, and the list goes on. So purpose evolves depending on the season that you're in life. The thing about purpose is that nobody can tell you what your purpose is. You and you alone have to discover that. You and you alone have to decide it. But here's the good news. Once you do, something amazing will happen in your life. When you discover the why in the season that you're in, it taps into the wellspring of motivation deep down into the spirit of the man or the woman who discovers their purpose, and you find this endless, flowing, gushing river of life that wants to come out, that allows you to work not just 9 to 5, but 9 to 9. It allows you to achieve more, run faster, and go farther than other people because it's endless motivation, because you've tapped into your why. That's why discovering your purpose in every season you're in becomes so important, because purpose becomes the fuel that fuels your vision. Purpose becomes the fuel that drives your vision. Purpose becomes the fuel that takes your vision to the next level in life. Purpose becomes the fuel that helps you walk through the struggles to come through stronger on the other end. Purpose becomes the wellspring of life that you tap into to achieve just about anything that you want. The next couple of statements of strength I want to share with you, affirmations, come from a very personal, intimate part of my life. It comes from my faith in God. You may or may not be a God person or a religious person, but let me ask you this. What do you believe in? Do you believe in something or do you believe in someone? Where are your sources of strength? I want to share this one with you, and it's the belief affirmation. Here's what it says. I will set fear aside and let faith arise to emerge a conqueror. There's a lot of meaning pregnant within that statement. The word fear, my wife says that there's 2 different kinds of acronyms for that. When I'm facing something that I'm fearful of, I make one of 2 choices. One, I can either face everything and rise, or forget everything and run. So when you're facing something, do you want to forget everything and run, or face everything and rise? So you have to make that choice. It's a choice of courage, and courage, again, isn't the absence of fear. It's the willing to move forward in spite of it. So whatever you're facing at this point in your life, let me encourage you to press on through the storm. Because at some point, everybody's afraid of something. At some point, everybody's immobilized by something. But you have to choose to walk through it if you want to break through it. The second part to that statement, I will set fear aside and let faith arise to emerge a conqueror. This is a statement that has fueled me and strengthened me for so many years. The word faith is a great acronym for forward action inspired through Him. Forward action inspired through Him, through God, through Jesus Christ. The Apostle Paul is one of my heroes. I love reading a lot of his writings. He has these strength statements that he says that I've adopted for my own. One of them he says is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He even said at one point that God had shared with him that in your weakness, my power is made perfect. That's encouraging to me, that God is attracted to weakness. In another place, God actually said, I am nigh to those who are of a broken heart and a contrite spirit. So where does weakness and fear have to come, and where does it fit in, frankly, in the middle of these 10 strength statements? It's out of weakness that you can be made strong when you tap into the source, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. Because if you put your trust in not just something but someone, what you're going to discover is that their strength you get to add to your strength. So what is your faith walk? Who do you believe in? What do you put your strength in? It's something to think about. This next statement of strength, again, lives within inside of me every month. There's not a day that goes by that, frankly, I don't lead into it, and it's the statement of destiny. It empowers me because it puts me in control of my destiny and reminds me, frankly, that I'm responsible for my destiny. No one but me can lead me into my destiny. So here's what the statement says. It says, I will reframe what happens to me so experiences become mentors and not tormentors. One thing all great successful people have in common is that no matter what happens to them, they turn what would be normally torture for a lot of people into a tutoring experience. Instead of something being pain, they turn it into gain. How do you do that? You reframe it. You ask yourself questions when difficult things happen. Questions like, how can I use this to my advantage? What can I learn from this? As painful as this is, can I use this, or can this be used to help someone else? Your dirt becomes somebody else's soil in a lot of cases. You have to be able to repurpose and reframe the negative in your life. So what brought weakness or what brought pain brings strength and brings gain. And you've got to do this for every situation. I know some of you are saying, Scott, that's a great fancy affirmation. That's a great thing to say. I will repurpose pain into gain. I will take bad experiences and take them from becoming tortures into, tutors. But you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I'm going through. I may not know what you're going through. I may not know what you've been through, but I know what I've gone through. I know what I'm going through. And I know I'm going to go through things in the future where I'm going to need this again and again and again. There's a time and a purpose under every season after heaven. Solomon wrote that in the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes. I promise you that you may not have the answer right away, but if you shift your thinking and you start thinking about how to reframe it, within a day or two, ideas will start to pop into your mind. So you've got to be able to reframe the negative into the positive, the pain into the gain, the tormentors into tutors. So even the negative experiences in life get turned around so they become things that strengthen you. And that's how you walk into your future and go from strength to strength. It's also how you repurpose tragedy into triumph. Let me share an interesting story with you. It's always been a favorite story of mine. The story is told of a town that had this big factory in it, and everybody but one man worked at the factory within this town. The factory was very important because it didn't just sustain the town, it made products that sustained all the towns around it. Well, one day, there's thousands of workers working, as there was every day, and the machine that powers the whole factory breaks down. The manager doesn't know what to do. The employees are standing around and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what do we do? This has never happened before. And then a wise man says, I know somebody who can fix the machine. He's a repairman. So they dial the repairman up. They call him up on the phone. Repairman shows up. And over the next course of probably what was a half an hour, or at least it felt like a half an hour, but it might have only been 5 minutes, the repairman starts to walk around and analyze the machine while thousands of people on the factory floor looked on. He looks in one area, he looks on another, he looks to the right, to the left, up and down, north, south, east, and west, and he's just looking, he's staring, and you could just see he's thinking and he's processing. And then for the first time in the 30 minutes as he walked around the machine, he actually does something. He pulls a hammer out from his bag, he taps on this one area of the machine, and the machine powers up. The factory workers in the whole atmosphere erupts in applause, and they're so grateful because they can now go back to work and start living their purpose again. So later that day, the manager gets the invoice from the repairman, and it's $1,000. The manager goes, $1,000? He emails the repairman back and says, I saw what you did. You were only here a half hour, and you didn't really do much. You just tapped on the machine. I'm going to need an itemized invoice if I'm going to process this. So about an hour goes by and the repairman replies to the email. And this is what the new invoice said. For showing up and tapping on your machine, $1. But for no, $999. When you learn to reframe the bad experiences and mine the gold out of them for your future and turn what is bad into good, you become the repairman on the inside that no matter what happens, you're able to repair and repurpose even the bad things. So that which would make you weaker actually makes you stronger. The next statement of strength, statement of affirmation that brings strength to me I want to share with you, was a seed that was planted in me when I was 14 years old. And that seed has grown and grown and grown over the years into tremendous strength in my life. Here's what the statement is. If you're looking at your notes here, it may be on your screen by now. It has to do with the word promise. And here's the affirmation. I will look for the invisible providential hand of God in my life, knowing he will work all things together for good as he has promised in Romans 8:28. When I was 14, my parents asked me to meet with this guy called Pastor John. Well, John was this older guy, and I didn't really like church, didn't care about church, but they wanted me to meet with him. So I met with John, and John and I had a conversation. And later that year, he gave me this little rock for my birthday. And on the rock, it had this scripture, Romans 8:28. It's the first scripture I think anybody ever gave to me. In its scripture, Romans 8:28 says this, God works all things together for good to those who love him, for those who are called according to his purpose. That was a seed that was planted back then that, frankly, I had no idea it would grow. Because when I was 14, I didn't want anything to do with God or religion or any of those things. But that seed stayed within inside of me. And what I realized over the years that it meant is that no matter what bad things happen, if I get off course or things don't go according to plan, if I trust in God, he will kind of work all things together for my good. Now, a lot of people look at God as, the big power in the sky, the wizard behind the curtain, and they think life is just, if God's involved, it's all abracadabra and it's easy sailing. Well, it's simply not true. But he promises to walk through the storms of life with us. He promises to help us get back on track when we get off. He promises that when the unexpected happens, he's not surprised even though we are. So he'll work it all together for good. But it's not abracadabra. There's actually somebody that's trying to work things out for you when you put your trust in him. So this has been a statement of strength for me that I always remind myself that even when tough things happen or things don't go according to plan, I know that God's going to work it together for good somehow. And most of the time, frankly, I don't really know how it's going to work out, but I trust that he's going to work it out. Again, do you trust in something or someone or both? What are your go-to statements of strength? What strengthens you? Who strengthens you? Here's one more thing I want to share with you about Romans 8:28. As God's working things together, as he's working the miracles together, the invisible miracles that a lot of times we can't see, there's nothing that God can do in you and through you and with you, but there's nothing he'll do without you. He doesn't work alone. You will always play a part in your miracle. You'll also play a part in somebody else's miracle. So what part do you need to play today? What is the part that you need to be working on? Okay, we're in the home stretch. This next one is what I call service, and let me read it to you. I will receive those who show up on my path, believing that they may be an answer to my prayers, or that I may be an answer to theirs. Let me tell you the exact experience where this was actually taught to me. A number of years ago, I bought a rental property in another state, and for a number of months, nobody rented it, and I couldn't quite figure out why. I was doing everything right. I did what the experts told me to do. And then so one day, just before I walked into the health club, I found myself kind of praying and wondering and asking for help. God, because that's what I do. That's what you do when you need help. You go to a person, you go to a place. In this case, I went on my knees. Hey, can you send me some tenants? No kidding. My phone rang while I was on the treadmill. And it was this insurance company. And the insurance company said, hey, we've got this person whose house burned down. They've been staying in a hotel for days. We can't seem to get them into a rental unit. Is your place available? I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, does it happen that quickly? Sometimes it can. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Sometimes answer to prayers take longer than we want because God's trying to build something in us in between the amen and the there it is. The important thing is that we maintain faith, that we don't give up hope in the middle of it. Well, as I'm talking to this insurance agent, I said, yes, it's available. And then this insurance agent said to me, this was a Friday, by the way, I can't get you any of the paperwork or payment till Monday. Is it possible you would let them go into your unit today? Because they've been in the hotel for days. They've got pets, they're trying to get out. It's a family that's struggling. And before we can repair their home, which was burned down from a fire, we've got to get them situated into a new temporary place. I didn't say that I would at the time, but I told the insurance agent that I would talk to the tenant. So I called them up, and as I talked to them, I felt confident and comfortable in them. So I gave them access to my property without having anything signed, and frankly, without having anything paid, because I believed that serendipitously, we had been brought together. Well, After that phone call, I'm running on the treadmill, and here was the whisper that I heard in my heart. While I'm answering your prayer, I'm going to use you to answer somebody else's prayer. It was like a double answer. So that's where the statement comes from, and let me read it to you again. This has to do with serving others, serving a purpose greater than yourself, serving a need in the moment. And it says this: I will receive those who show up on my path, believing that they may be an answer to my prayer or that I may be an answer to theirs. There's no accidents. This isn't coincidence. I believe it's by design. So whatever it is you're needing today, remember, answers to prayers come through a person or a place. God may be choosing to answer one of your prayers through somebody else, and you may be an answer to somebody else, so be sensitive to that. I think the analogy goes like this. I think heaven's a little bit like a mailroom. As you send one request up, another one comes down. Assignments are given out, and sometimes people show up on our path, and while it may seem like coincidence, it's really by design, and it's your opportunity to serve a person, a cause, and as you become an answer to their prayer, somebody will be sent to you to become an answer to your prayer. The last statement of strength for me is really a reminder to myself. I'm pretty self-sufficient. A lot of successful people are, but we have to remember that the goal isn't to just be productive. It's not just to be successful. It's to go through life on life, and walk the road of life with other people. So the last one I call creative mindset. And here's my statement of affirmation. You can read along with me on your screen. I will be open-minded, choosing to acknowledge my limitations by embracing different ways of thinking. You've probably heard it said before, all of us knows more than one of us. Whatever your problem you're going through, somebody's gone through it themselves. I'm pretty good and resourceful at fixing my own problems, but here's what I've learned. When I start to walk the hallways of my life, sometimes in my office, sometimes as I'm through my hallways at home, sometimes on the phone with friends, I call those the hallways of life too. As I share what I'm struggling with, what starts to happen is that they'll speak ideas into my problem, or we could just be having a conversation, and their different way of looking at something can unlock something inside of me. It can give me a new idea. It can sometimes do neither of those two. Sometimes the conversation just prepares my heart to receive what I'm going to get in the next meeting that I have. But all of us knows more than one of us. Next time you're struggling with something, or next time you need an idea, or next time you want to just tap into the energy, the creativity and environment, start talking to people about what you're working on, even if it's not a problem, and then see what emerges. My wife calls talking it out. A lot of us like to process out loud because faith comes by hearing, strength comes by hearing, and that's why these affirmations of strength aren't just to be beliefs on the inside, to know what you believe so you can be cemented in your convictions, which will lead to strength, but they need to be spoken on the outside so the outer ear hears what the inner ear is hearing. Let me say that again. You've got to say these sometimes on the outside so the outer ear hears what the inner ear of the heart hears as well. Because when the two of them come into agreement, when they come into alignment, it creates an environment of strength. It creates a spirit of strength, and you'll be able to add steel to your spirit actually to get you through whatever you're going through. And for some of you, you may not need a breakthrough right now, but you may want to go to the next level of something. When you cement what your convictions are, when you decide what your statements of strength would be, when you know what your belief is, when you know who you believe in, and you write those down and begin to just walk them out, you'll begin to transform day by day. I hope you've enjoyed these 10 statements of strength, these statements of affirmation from my life. If a couple of them inspired you, write them down, live them out. But I hope more than anything, they inspire you to develop your own. Because again, they're not just statements of strength, but they're statements that challenge me too. It's easy to talk the talk. It's sometimes harder to walk the talk. But the first step is identifying what you believe and then start walking into it. And every time you walk into something you believe in, something you're reaching for, you're one step closer to creating the future you want. Thank you very much.